Hello friends, how are you doing today? My name is Mary, this is Happily Ever Esch. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I, like so many other Americans, and for that matter, lots of individuals around the world, was horrified and saddened and angered by the murder of George Floyd, the murder of Breonna Taylor, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, the murder and oppression of a list that's too long, a list that is beyond our generation. I'm saddened that the list goes on and on and on. Something that I have been doing this week a lot, and I'm hoping not just this week, but really, taking time to consider it this week, is listening. And there's been so many wonderful videos from individuals that have come up on Booktube that I've been so appreciative to just hear people's perspectives and their stories, and I'm just so grateful. And so I think it can feel like, what's the point of adding your voice to the mix? I'm preaching to myself here. I need to stand up and shout it, that Black Lives Matter. I think it's not enough to just believe it. It's the bare minimum to use your voice and your platform, and no matter how small that platform is, to stand up against what is human rights violations, what is wrong. It's wrong. And so yeah, again, this is the bare minimum to use your voice to stand up. And I know that there's endless resources on the internet. I will link some down below that I found really helpful. Again, videos that I found really helpful and inspiring will also be linked down below. But I think now more than ever is a time to not be silent, is a time to remind ourselves that silence in a lot of ways is complicity, to remind ourselves that the work starts in our own families. I think that that's such a huge part that we have as people, is to make positive change in small ways in our families, and the conversations we're willing and able to have in our neighborhoods, in our communities. And I know personally there's a lot more education that needs to happen on my part, a lot more listening that needs to happen. I'm grateful for the ways I've been challenged in my life to listen and to empathize with others, and I don't think that that's a one-time check in the box thing. I think it's ongoing work that we have to fight for. I have to fight for, and I think that as we listen, there's so many ways that we can do that, but a wonderful way to do that is to read. And I think, being bookish people here on the Booktube community, I think what better time than to share some books that have been impactful to me, have helped me listen better and understand in a small way better. I'm so grateful for the way books allow us to empathize, but we can only do that if we're reading diverse voices, reading diverse books. And it's something that I know it's a piece of my reading, but I want it to be much more. And I think that this idea that it will just like passively hit me in the face is ridiculous, and it's something that I need to be actively searching out more, and need to do better of knowing what's out there. Again, there's so many resources. Some that I found helpful will be linked down below. I know my voice isn't the most necessary, but I do think not using our voice is the wrong thing to do. And not just in this time, not just when it's on the news, but continually. So that being said, I would love to have a dialogue down in the comments below. I would love to be challenged. I think that there's this fear of criticism, and I don't think it's something to be fearful of. And I know that's hard to believe, at least for me. It's hard to believe too sometimes. But I want to choose instead to be grateful for for being stretched and challenged and educated, because it's our jobs to educate ourselves. There's a wealth of resources. So if someone's taking the time to share their experience and to share education with you, I think instead of being hurt by that, to take it as gratitude, and that person is, you know, taking the time and the care to reach out. So, and I'm so grateful for these few books, not a comprehensive list, but books I think that speak to this moment well. And they're books that are so worth your time to listen to. And so I'd love to know books that have made a big impact on you, that have been important for you to listen to. Again, I implore you to go watch some of the videos that I'm linking down below, because I think the words that are said are abundantly worth listening to. So that being said, let's hop into some books. Thank you for taking the time to be here with me. I appreciate it. Let's get into it. The first, and one that I know is extremely popular, but if you haven't read it, I think now is the time, and that's Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption by Bryan Stevenson. I also know that the movie that recently came out for this is being offered for free right now. My friend recently just watched it, and I'm like, well, I'll give you the book so you can read it. I'll link that resource down below. And there's so many wonderful resources that are being offered for free right now. I know Stamped from the Beginning is being offered for free on Spotify. How amazing. Anyway, Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption, is all about how unjust our judicial system is, in particular for minority communities. Bryan Stevenson manages to pack so much into such a short little book. His life work is amazing, and I truly believe he's a national treasure. But his work with those who are wrongly convicted, who do not get a fair shot in the judicial system, it's just stunning. His compassion and love for the people he's working with is, like I said, I mean, this book is stunning. The audiobook, really great. I think it should be required reading. It's amazing. One book that I haven't been able to shut up about since I read it, so but I think especially for this particular moment we're in is really powerful, is Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward. This looks at historical trauma. This book is set in Mississippi and is kind of centered around Parchment Prison. So I think the look at historical trauma in this and the way she weaves the narrative is really impactful, but also educational. But one of my favorite parts about this book is the relationship between the grandfather and the grandson. She writes with such compassion and love for her characters. I think that this book is stunning. I think it's one of the best books I've ever read. And I can't personally wait to read more of Jesmyn Ward's work. This also manages to be lyrical and beautiful, but also like a page turner. She just weaves the story together masterfully. But again, the look at historical trauma in this is one of the best portrayals that I've ever read in literature. Next, we have a graphic novel, which I think would be a great resource for anywhere from like a middle grade on up, and that's March by John Lewis. Why I think that this book is so important, especially in this current moment that we're in, is the look at John Lewis's work in the non-violence protest movement in Nashville. And why I think that's so important is because this so clearly shows how violent the nonviolent movement was because of the actions towards the protesters. And why that's so important is because there's been such a narrative and almost like this gross distortion of what happened in the 60s to pit against what's going on now. And why that's so disgusting is because the cost of nonviolence is so great and is so violent, and with all of the retaliation we've been seeing towards peaceful protesters, the tear gas, the rubber bullets, the extreme violence, is so paralleled to John Lewis's experiences in this, and those experiences were a huge part in waking up the nation to seeing the disgusting and terrible oppression. And so I think for many reasons this is an important read, but especially to see the parallels, and even though it's been 60 years, how still so much work needs to be done, and how still the brutalization and the horrible treatment of protesters, it's not something just in the history books, it's something that we're experiencing now. This book is necessary. There's 2 or 3 more parts to this that I still need to read, but I think that this would start such good conversations with your children, with your spouse, with whoever, and the visuals in this, they're just, it's a necessary book. And then last but certainly not least, I've lent both of these books out to a friend, The Hate U Give, which I think goes without saying why that's important and necessary, and such an honest portrayal of police brutality, but also another stunning and gorgeous look at community and family and friendship. So many great things about that book. But that's I guess that's a little bonus one, but I know how popular that book is, so you probably don't need me to recommend it to you. But then also The Color of Compromise by Jemar Tisby. I think Jemar Tisby is smart. I have listened to his podcast, read articles by him. He's a necessary voice for all times, but especially for this time. But The Color of Compromise is the look at the church's complicity with racism, the church's condoning and participating in the oppression of Black human beings. It's a hard look to see an institution that you love be so intricately involved in the perpetuation of systematic oppression, but this book is so necessary because if we can't confront, and all of these books, but if we can't confront the past and look at it and educate ourselves and learn from it, how will we ever be able to move forward? The answer is we can't, or I don't think we can't. And so I think that this is necessary, a necessary look, but also his recommendations for how the church can reconcile and give reparation for the hurt and the pain that they've caused throughout American history, and not standing up for what Scripture says to be true, which is that all people are image bearers of the Most High, all people, that Black lives are worthy and valuable and they matter, and the fact that the church has not stood for that is wrong, and we have to call it out, and we have to confront why there is still issues in many churches to this day. But again, you can clearly see from what I said, it's got Christian themes. Obviously, it's about the church, but I think if you're interested in history and the church's role in America's history of racism and oppression, I think it's great. And like I said, I think Jemar Tisby is so wise, and I just appreciate his voice. And like I said, I've listened to him through many articles and podcasts, and I'm just so grateful for his voice. So yeah, those are some books that have made big impacts on me. Again, I would love to have a dialogue. I would love to know some books that you've listened to that have impacted you, that have been important to you. I thank you for taking the time to watch this. I had planned to take the month of June off from making Booktube videos, just as kind of like a mid-year refresher, but the pain that has been going on in our communities and our country was just too great not to talk about, not to use my voice to say something about. I think I had said earlier, you know, it's easy to believe that our voices don't matter, but we're seeing positive change because of people using their voices and for standing up against injustices. Silence is complicity. I'm preaching that to myself. It's hard to end this. But thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later. Bye.